Do you want to make a D&D adventure for just one player? Well, I've made a solo D&D adventure before, so here's how I did it. So before I made one of these, I'd always considered solo adventure to be slightly defeating the point of D&D. I'd always considered a tabletop RPG to be a bit of a group social activity. That being said, my first experiences with Dungeons & Dragons were actually with a very small group of just 3 people. Smaller parties can absolutely work in the game, there's nothing stopping them, and so can a lone adventurer as well. I mean, have you ever read Conan the Barbarian? Conan rarely has any companions, and he usually just wades in by himself to save the day, so it's not like the idea of a solo fantasy adventurer has absolutely no basis in fiction whatsoever. For myself, it all started when a friend of mine reached out wanting to try out the idea of a solo game, so I said sure, why not? I mean, I've got a few games under my belt at this point, why not give it a try? So let's talk about what I learned and what I would tell my younger self if I was embarking on my first solo D&D adventure. The first thing to talk about is that I wouldn't really worry too much about the adventure structure. From a design point of view, D&D is still D&D no matter the player count, so story, beats, and major set pieces, they all really work the same. The difference, however, is really in the details. When designing solutions to problems, you need to tailor them much more to the character. Remember, D&D characters have a limited tool set, and jack-of-all-trades characters don't really work all that well. Just look at the 3.5 Bard, for example. I would actually consider running a session 0 before you even have a campaign idea, honestly. That way you can get an idea of what character you're designing for and what your player is wanting to do. And let's be honest, if there's only one player, then they've got to be the focus and they're going to be the main character. Whereas a group dynamic lets everyone sort of share in the glory and have their own screen time, now you have one focus and one driving force. So make sure to put in some challenges where our main character will excel and feel absolutely heroic. Some examples? Well, if your lone character is a rogue, then maybe double down on that theme and build a heist type of adventure, mostly focusing on stealth, careful planning to succeed. Tack on a homebrew rule about video game style stealth assassination kills, and you can basically just build Hitman in tabletop RPG form. Fighters, barbarians, rangers, they're all really good candidates for a Jack Reacher story, where one man trundles into town and sorts out some sort of big old problem they've been having, and there's some no-holds-barred action. Wizards and druids are really good picks for some sort of magical mystery. I mean, let them experience and discover some arcane lore. There's few times when you can really narrow down and focus on being a wizard, or even just send them on some sort of extra planar adventure, maybe. And remember, anyone can roleplay. Anyone can use their head to try and figure out puzzles and mysteries, so those aspects of a D&D adventure will work just fine. Otherwise, you can pretty much just follow any blueprint of adventure design you like. Just remember to keep things scaled down properly when you get to combat encounters. There's only so much one person can do alone, right? Well, there's nothing to say that a D&D solo adventure has to be a lonely experience. I mean, even Batman has Robin. Dungeon crawls especially have a little bit of a problem where a diverse set of abilities and roles are sort of needed to clear it. One of the things I did absolutely right in my own tabletop game was add in NPCs to fight alongside the player. These allies filled critical gaps in their arsenal, and it allowed me to drive the story in a bunch of different directions. The lack of players actually means that you can sprinkle in NPCs for them to pick up and join the party. It sort of feels quite natural when those NPCs get up and join the party, or just leave to go back to their day jobs. They might even stick around for more adventures as well. It actually opens the door for a way to introduce new characters into the adventure in a way that feels really like a natural extension of the story. If you've ever felt that the old classic of everyone meets in the tavern is a bit too stilted, maybe a bit too scripted, then you're in for a treat. For combat, you can take a note from the Savage Worlds rulebook, which actually encourages players to be in full control of their own allies as well as their own characters. Give your player control over all the NPCs, let them play like they're playing Baldur's Gate or something. It works. Controlling a small squad of characters is easier than you'd think. I mean, the Dungeon Master does it all the time, right? How bad can it be? If the player is by themselves, though, then, as I previously mentioned, it might be best to keep things small. You can always use a few optional rules from the DMG, however, to help them out. The Cleave Through special rule is wonderfully cinematic. It lets any damage from a successful hit, which kills an enemy, carry over to the next one in the line. It's easy to imagine the barbarian swinging a great axe and turning a goblin into absolute paste, only to lodge his axe in the next goblin in the row as well. The optional rule for hero points can also help give a solo adventurer that much needed heroic boost to overcome danger. Hero points are a pool of points which scale with level and can be spent on actions to increase the result of dice rolls. They're a limited resource though, and I'd only let them be reset at certain crossroads points in the story to prevent them from becoming a crutch. The other optional rule for combat that I'd use would be side initiative. Typically in Dungeons and Dragons, each monster and player rolls initiative at the start of combat, and whoever gets high goes first. But with side initiative, the players and the monsters each combine their rolls, and the highest combined score goes first as an entire group. Since there's only one player, it's probably easier to just let them move all their NPCs and their own character all together as a group, rather than having this back and forth between you two. It'll make combat flow a lot easier. The other big opportunity that running a solo adventure can give you is to allow the story to focus on the player's character's own story. Depending on how specific they get, it could be relatively simple to include some named characters from their backstory or set the adventure in their character's hometown. In fact, you don't even need to go that far. When making a narrative centered around the player, I'd really encourage you to look closely at the character's themes and traits. What are they struggling with? What is their goal and motivation? What makes them a wandering adventurer? What do they question about life? Or even, who are they in love with? These are all good questions to be asking to help you understand what themes you should write into the story. You should try and structure the narrative and tell a story which aims to further their goals, address the character's problems, and help them develop as a person. And you don't need to mention every single thing from their backstory in order to do this. Another thing to mentally prepare yourself for is the intensity of these sessions. Since there's only one player, you'll quickly find the usual cross-table chit-chat won't be nearly as frequent. All of your attention is going to be dedicated to that one person, and it will make them much more engaged with what you're doing. After all, if they don't do anything, the story doesn't move. Players sometimes take a back seat for a session or two, and that's totally fine. It's a natural part of the game because it lets others take the spotlight and be the heroes. With a solo game, however, you're basically a one-man stand-up routine. You'd better be ready to contribute. There ain't nobody else who's gonna get up and drive. At least the scheduling will be easier. Am I right, guys? Well, yes and no. I think this goes without saying, but it's easier to get one person in a room rather than 5 or so. But equally, if something happens, you can't exactly run a session with no players. If you're not interested in writing something custom, then the wider tabletop community has you covered as well. After some brief research, I found End Times of Erendor, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, which claims to be a solo adventure series. But for a more classic feel, you can also go with The Order of the Broadsword. Now, I haven't played either of these, so I can't speak for their quality or recommend them, but it goes to show that if you want something off the shelf for a solo player, then there's a lot of options out there for you as well. And that's everything I learned making my own solo adventure. Thank you for joining me. If this helped you, then please give this video a like. It helps a bunch. I'll be making more of these videos in the future, so make sure to stay tuned and subscribe if you want more. If you want me to look at or cover a specific topic in a video, then I'd absolutely love to know about it, so consider leaving a comment. Also, I stream on Twitch, so link below if you want to talk to me live. There's a link in the description to my socials if you want to talk to me there as well. I also have a brand new Discord where I post announcements, and I'm quite active there, so feel free to join. It's brand new, don't mind the empty space. That's all from me, see you next time, and cheerio.